Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My Karen girlfriend refuses to cook extra breakfast for me. After that, want revenge by paying in pennies? Here, let me count those for you. And after that, grumpy church group seemed confused about what my job is. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen has to make extra breakfast. You want some breakfast, Reddit boy? How does Lucky Charms sound? So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My Karen girlfriend refuses to cook extra breakfast for me. I, 27 male, have been living with my girlfriend, who's 29 female, for several months now. For the most part, things are really good, and I plan to propose soon and hopefully have at least a couple of kids with her. However, we've run up against a conflict. She's an absolute morning person. I hate mornings. By the time I force myself out of bed in the morning and into the shower, she's already been up for at least 30 minutes, even though she has to be at work later than I do, and is at the stove making breakfast. She likes to make a huge breakfast in the morning. She usually has eggs, either French toast or pancakes, hash browns or breakfast potatoes, and sausage or bacon. Sometimes on weekends it's ham or steak. She eats almost nothing for lunch and usually has a small dinner, but she loves a huge breakfast. Meanwhile, I only ever have cold cereal for breakfast, or maybe if I'm feeling really ambitious, some instant oatmeal and orange juice. I only even start to come alive halfway through my second cup of coffee and definitely don't feel like cooking in the morning. However, my girlfriend obviously does. So recently, I asked her if she'd start making breakfast for me too. She asked if we were going to trade off and if I'd sometimes make breakfast for her too. I told her no, but reminded her that I do often make dinner for her. She said that since we trade off making dinner, we should trade off making breakfast too. I told her that there's no way I'll ever be able to muster that kind of energy first thing in the morning, but that since she obviously can, that she should just make me breakfast too. I said that it would take next to no extra effort on her part to throw in a couple more eggs, strips of bacon, an extra portion of hash browns, etc., since she's already doing it for herself anyway. But it started a fight, with her saying that it wasn't fair for me to expect her to think of me in the morning since I don't do the same for her. She seems to think that her making breakfast for me should figure into our division of labor and that I should do something extra in return. But I think that since she makes a huge breakfast for herself every morning anyway, that throwing an extra portion of whatever she's making on for me would take next to no effort on her part. So why should I have to do more for her in return than I already do? You're the jerk. Oh, so we'll take turns making breakfast for each other? No, you'll just make food for me. It's no extra effort for you anyways. The cheek on you. Dude should have offered to make dinner every night in exchange for breakfast every morning from her. The only way I could see this as not the jerk is if OP was down to make dinner as often, or in my personal opinion, more often, as the girlfriend makes breakfast. Come on, OP. Obviously, you're aware of the energy required to do things like make breakfast in the morning, so you should be at least willing to reciprocate later in the day. I'd be tucking her in, kissing her goodnight, and reading her a bedtime story if I could wake up to bacon and eggs some mornings. You're talking about proposing and having kids? Will she never get a morning off from the kids because you hate mornings? She's already up, so she should be the one to pack bags and lunches and cook everyone's breakfast? She's naturally feeding, so you never need to cover the night wake-ups. She's home earlier often, and that's the person who starts dinner and picks up the kids and deals with the homework, but you're totally doing 50-50. She's washing her clothes anyway, so it's no extra effort to put yours in, then fold them and put them away because she's doing that for the rest of the load, right? It sounds like she already feels like she's doing more, and now you're asking for something else. If it would require effort and energy for you to do it, it requires effort and energy for her to do it. This may be a small amount of additional energy for this one thing, but it makes me wonder if she's already feeling that she's putting out significantly more effort for household duties as it stands. Oh, and you're the jerk. Dude's girlfriend gets up early and makes herself a big breakfast every day. He asks her to make a little extra for him, and she flips out and refuses to do it. You're the jerk for staying with someone who treats you like this. There are actually women out there who would be happy to put a few extra eggs on in the morning so you can have something to eat too. But you definitely won't find them here on Reddit. Best part is, imagine if the roles were flipped. My husband gets up early and makes a huge breakfast just for himself every morning. I asked if he'd be willing to make a little extra for me, and he refuses to do it. All of you hypocrites would be telling her to divorce him and that she deserves better. Then you'd have the pathetic thirsty dudes commenting how they wish they could cook her breakfast since her boyfriend doesn't. They always pop up somewhere. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. It breaks my heart how transactional relationships have become. Want revenge by paying in pennies? Here, let me count these for you. Ages ago, I worked a frontline job at City Hall, registering cars and dogs and collecting money for parking tickets, property taxes, and the like. So, a basic entry-level municipal finance grunt, bottom of the food chain, nowhere close to being the one making the ordinances or rules, just a grunt. This was before the days of taking credit cards and debit cards for such payments, before smartphones, before the online banking world really began. Ages ago. Paper, paper, paper. The city's ordinance on tax interest stated that interest would accrue daily against any past due tax bill at a rate of blah blah blah. Property taxes were due quarterly. Many people would come in to pay cash on the tax due date. Many, many more would remit their payments by checks through the mail. We kept extremely thorough paper records of all payments received through the mail, retaining their remittance stub, the envelope bearing the postmark, which was the date we would use to calculate any interest if it arrived past the due date. If the postmark was before or on the due date, no interest was charged. These were batched daily by each clerk, filed by date in our vault, so anyone who needed to could find any receipt or remittance fairly quickly. We needed to, often, as did the city auditor. Anyway, business as usual, and the few days following the tax due, we would always get a few stragglers through the mail, and the daily interest would have started adding up. Not by a lot. For most homeowners, this would only amount to just a few cents a day. We would send them a receipt in the mail with a note that they have a small balance now due to accrued interest, but we would hold it at the amount for 10 days. Most people would just send another check, some would ignore it, and others would come to pay it in person. Finally, the stars aligned and I got one. A real jerk of a gentleman who was extremely disgruntled that he got a bill in the mail for this horrible interest BS, which he slapped down on the counter inches away from me. He then slammed a repurposed melatonin bottle full of pennies down on top of the paper and said, "I hope whoever sent me this bill has to count these pennies," at top volume for all of the city hall to hear. I could tell already that it was mine. I saw my initials on the receipt when he slapped it down. Cue malicious compliance. I smiled as big as I could, said I would find out who had processed it, and took his receipt to the vault. I didn't even give him enough time to react. I just got up and went to the vault while cheerfully saying, "It'll just be a minute," before disappearing from his sight. I found the paperwork, including his 2 days late postmarked envelope. Then I sat down at my desk, took the melatonin bottle, looked him in the eye and said, "You're in luck today, sir. I'm the one who sent this balance due to you, so I will be able to count these pennies for you." And I did. I counted all 39 of those pennies, and I counted them one by one, very, very thoroughly. It took him about 20 minutes to pay his 39 cents from the minute that bottle hit the counter to the end of it. I was extremely pleasant and cordial and smiling at him the entire time. It was just fun at that point, so I kept pouring it on, just so sweet. His face was practically purple by the end, and as he slunk out the door, without the smug satisfaction he was expecting when he slammed that bottle on my counter, I said, "Have a great rest of your day. Weather's beautiful." And it was. Grumpy Church Group seems confused about what my job is. A local church rented a few adjoining rooms for like a week or so for their pastor or other church officials. I'm not sure what their business is, but they seem like they're busy with meetings, etc. There are always people coming and going, and they like to congregate in our breakfast area by the lounge. They make coffee and bring snacks and refreshments or whatever, and meet for a few hours or so. This hasn't been an issue, and we haven't been particularly busy, but as the holiday approaches, we steadily get more and more busy. They're not rude per se, but they aren't exactly pleasant either. They asked me a number of times for plates, cutlery, etc. that I provided from our stores, and after the third time or so, I told them that our supplies are running low, so I can only provide so much. They gave me a look like they were thinking, "What kind of place is this?" and took what I offered. Sometimes they don't completely clean up after themselves either, which is annoying. A few times they asked me to ask other guests to leave their meeting area because they were disturbing them. I informed them that other guests are free to use our public spaces as they like. I didn't want to sound rude, but I suggested if they held their meetings in their rooms, no one would disturb them there. More, what kind of rat hole place is this? Stares. We sold out fairly early yesterday, and I was running through the bucket checking info and helping guests' phone calls, etc. when one of the church members came to the desk looking grumpier than usual. He was glaring at me with a sour bulldog face as I was hanging up with a guest. I braced and internally prepared for whatever this was going to be. He asked me what I was doing. I said, helping guests at the moment, but what can I do for you? Bulldog. When you were doing whatever you were doing, people have been eating our cupcakes from our meeting area. They were meant for later. Me. I'm sorry, sir. What meeting area? He points to the breakfast area. Me. I apologize, sir, but that's our breakfast area, which is open to all of the guests. If food is left there unattended, we're not responsible for whatever happens to it. Bulldog. So, what should we do then? I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, keep it in one of your rooms until you're ready for your meeting maybe? Bulldog. I saw some dirty-looking kid grab one. Now we have to throw the rest out. And there are people drinking at the bar, being loud, causing a disturbance. He went on for a bit, I guess fully expecting me to clear out the area so they can have their meeting in their meeting area. I just repeated, it's a public space. We're not responsible for whatever they leave out. My job is to attend to guests, and I can't police their cupcakes or whatever. I didn't say it like that, but I made my point. He, at least, expected full compensation for the cupcakes, and I said I can't clear that because they chose to leave their stuff in a public area, and that isn't our responsibility at all. He got my name and my manager's cards and he left. He didn't do anything about the cupcakes, and he didn't say if they were going to meet there or not, so I just left it. Near the end of my shift, no one from the church had been by, and the cupcakes were still there, so I just threw them away. They're only here through Saturday, thank God, and I'm off tomorrow, so I don't have to see them. Praise. Am I the jerk for refusing to give up my seat and being crass about it? I, 36 female, flew home for Thanksgiving this week and got an early flight this morning so I would be able to do laundry tomorrow and relax before going back to work. I'm a plus-size woman. The cause was finally diagnosed after 3 years of weight gain. I've lost 4 pounds in the last 4 weeks. So when I booked my flights, I spent extra money and booked 2 adjacent seats, so whoever had the 3rd seat in my row would not have to be squished up in my business. Flying out was great. The other person in my row was cool, and we shared the middle seat and snacks and played Pokemon on our Switches and visited each other's Animal Crossing islands. Flying home was where things became a bit more problematic. I was settled into my pair of seats, and the gentleman tried to seat his daughter, who was around 12, in the middle seat, where I was taking up a good third of it. I said politely, "I'm sorry, that seat is booked. Your daughter can't sit there," while putting my hand on the other 2/3 of the seat. He immediately complained that he hadn't been able to book seats together and he needed to sit with his daughter. I shrugged and said I was sorry, but it wasn't my problem. This wasn't his seat. He called over a stewardess to complain. I explained my situation and showed my pair of tickets, and the flight attendant offered to comp my extra seat. I said no thank you, I needed the extra room, and waved to where I was partway into the middle seat. The stewardess came back 10 minutes later with a wife from a couple who agreed to switch seats so that the man could sit with his daughter. But not without attempting to shame me for not willing to help out a dad in need and commenting about how selfish I was. Edit. The woman who switched seats was rude, not the stewardess. The stewardess was nothing but polite. I said, I booked early and I booked 2 seats together because, to put it plainly, I'm big. The woman turned red in the face and complained to me for being disgusting. I replied that his lack of planning was not my emergency, and she scowled at me for the entire rest of the flight. When I told my folks about it after I landed, my dad thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard, but my mom yelled at him and said that I should have been more willing to help out a dad with a kid when I had 2 seats. So I want to know, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. These airplane issues are getting out of hand. It's very simple. You book a seat, you are entitled to it. People can ask you to change, but if you say no, that's it. End of story. I don't understand why people find this basic rule to be so hard to comprehend. Not the jerk. First of all, congrats on the diagnosis and the weight loss. That must be such an unbelievable relief to have answers and finally see some progress after struggling for 3 years. Second of all, you planned ahead, and while it isn't always possible for everyone to do, such as last-minute changes at work, you put forth the effort so that you would not be an inconvenience to anyone else due to your current body type. And you spent a lot of extra money to do so, I'm sure several $100s overall. He asked, and even though you were offered reimbursement, you declined, as is your right. And it sounds as though he would have been just as happy to take your extra seat without asking and without the flight seeing you reimbursed if you hadn't had the courage to speak up for yourself. Congrats on standing up for yourself and taking care of your needs. Am I the jerk for crashing my roommate's car and then wanting to use her insurance instead of paying out of pocket? I rear-ended my roommate's car last week at a stop sign. It was a pretty minor accident. I was going about 10 miles an hour, and it was just a slight bump. Anyways, we got it checked out, and there's $2,000 worth of damages to fix her car, and $1,000 for the guy I hit. I wanted to use my full coverage insurance, but they wouldn't let me as I got into the crash with a car that was not mine. I proposed to my roommate that we use her full coverage insurance, as that's what insurance is for, and she pays about $400 a month for it, and I'll cover any and all premium costs of the insurance as well as the $500 copayment requirement. My roommate doesn't agree to this deal. She proposed 2 things. 1, we use her insurance, I pay the premium cost, the copayment requirement, and the value of how much her car went down in the market because using her insurance will show up in the Carfax when she sells it. I asked her how will she know how much the car value depreciated, and she said when she sells the car next year, she'll ask the dealer how much her car value decreased due to the accident. I can't agree to this arrangement for a couple reasons. Firstly, I don't trust the dealer. Wouldn't they just exaggerate the amount the car value went down to get the car for cheaper? And secondly, as I can't play any role in talking to the dealer or selling the car, I'm essentially signing a blank check to pay however much she or the dealer deems the car went down next year. This is too risky. What if she insists it's like $5,000 next year? I'll have already agreed to pay the decreased car value for using her insurance. I also talked to my parents, and they said that car values don't depreciate for getting into minor accidents like this one, just major ones, especially if the car was 100% fixed up. But there's nothing I can say to convince her that using her insurance won't lead to a substantial decrease in value of her car due to the accident being recorded in the Carfax. 2. The second option, if I don't agree to this deal, is to pay for everything out of pocket and not get her insurance involved. This would be like almost an entire month's salary for me. It's insanely expensive, and I don't want to pay out of pocket when my roommate pays $400 a month for car insurance. In my opinion, insurance is exactly for moments like this, and I'm really sorry that I can't use mine, but I'm willing to pay the premium on hers. Her argument is that I have the audacity to negotiate or argue with her when I crashed her car, and I should be apologetic and agree to handle things the way she wants to handle it. Anyways, am I the jerk for refusing to either of her 2 options and continually trying to negotiate for using her insurance without the car value decrease stipulations? You're the jerk. You used her car, you follow her rules. Amazing, people don't understand this. You crash someone else's car and you have no say in how the owners want it to be handled. Sorry, but no. Don't loan your car out if you're not willing to deal with someone else's mess up. She's willing to pay for the damages and any increases in insurance. Unfortunately, OP's roommate just can't blindly ask for thousands of dollars for hypothetical damages on a small rear-end accident. At some point, you need to be realistic about the fact that lending people cars comes with a risk. Don't do it if you don't trust the person, and don't do it if you're unwilling to get totally done over. Quite frankly, OP would be totally in her right to say, oops, and let roommate take her to court and only get the $500 deductible maybe. ETA. People need to understand what liability means. It means you're taking responsibility and ownership of whatever happens in that car. Just like with homeowners insurance, you're responsible if someone gets hurt on your property, even if it's kids playing in your yard that aren't yours. OP's roommate wants to suffer absolutely no consequences of OP's actions, and while I get it, that's not how liability works. She needs to very quickly understand just how serious the concept is. If roommate is so concerned about the depreciation on their car and insurance companies supposedly pay for depreciation, then the solution is abundantly clear. Use the insurance. OP pays the deductible and increased premiums, and roommate then asks for lost value. You're the jerk. You damaged her car. You don't get to decide what is easiest and most convenient for you. If she doesn't want to go through insurance, you need to pay up. Insurance rates go up after an accident. It's one thing to pay up the increase when it's your own fault, but she shouldn't have to deal with the increased insurance for doing you a favor and loaning her car to you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her roommate? Please let us know. And this is why you don't let anyone borrow your car. Am I the jerk for telling my brother's girlfriend that Christmas isn't the meal to be cheap? I, 47 male, spend Christmas with my parents. My dad passed earlier this year, so my brother, who's 40, and his girlfriend, who's 32, I'll refer to her as Eve, have said that they will cook on Christmas. Eve is the cook. It's their first Christmas with their infant son, so they're very excited for it. When I was visiting my brother and Eve, they were talking excitedly about Christmas. This will be the first time Eve has cooked for Christmas, and the first time she has ever cooked a turkey. Brother said they had already bought the turkey. I frowned, as we had always had a fresh turkey from the local butchers, never a frozen turkey. Eve said that she had gotten a frozen turkey crown as it was cheaper and that they didn't need a large turkey with legs. She started talking through her plan, saying she had already bought turkey gravy mix as she didn't want to cook gravy from scratch, using tinned potatoes to make the roast potatoes, had already made stuffing balls and that they're in the freezer. I know that she's struggling for money at the moment as she is on maternity leave and is not returning to her job as nephew has additional needs. I was appalled when she said that she was going to cook Christmas dinner at their house the day before and then bring it to Mom's to heat it up. Mom is unable to do stairs, so we have to go to her. Eve tried explaining that due to the cost of living going up, she didn't want Mom to have the additional cost of cooking a Christmas dinner. They're having their own meal on the 24th, so Eve is cooking 2 dinners at once. I snapped at Eve. I told her that I know that she's being frugal with not going back to work, but that Christmas dinner wasn't the meal for her to be cheap on, especially Mom's first Christmas after her husband has passed. I told Eve that if she wasn't prepared to make a fresh meal that wasn't full of frozen food that God knows how old it is, then she shouldn't have offered to cook on Christmas. Eve then left the room with nephew, saying she needed to go feed him. My brother got annoyed with me, telling me that I was being rude. He said that he was the one paying for the Christmas meal. They had bought the turkey before Dad passed and had only gotten one big enough to feed them with leftovers. He had been the one that suggested including Mom and I for Christmas to Eve. Eve had been making things like stuffing balls and her homemade pigs in a blanket in advance, and using tinned potatoes was to make her life easier. He argued that Eve is the primary caretaker for nephew, so she takes shortcuts when she is home alone with nephew so that she can focus on him. Mom has called me and had a go at me for making Eve cry, especially when I know that she's stressed from looking after nephew. Apparently, she had taken nephew to go and cry upstairs, but I had no idea. I do feel bad that she got upset, but at the same time, I don't think Christmas is the one meal to be cheap on. Am I the jerk? Edit. I have always and will be supplying the dessert and making a dairy-free one for Eve. Me making the dessert was the agreement I had with my parents. They aren't actually struggling. They can and do live comfortably on my brother's wage. We work in the same field and are paid well. They chose to live well below their means. Okay, I'm the jerk. I will call my brother in the morning and apologize and see if I can come around to apologize to Eve in person, and I will offer to help her cook if she wants. I'm not going to turn up uninvited if Eve doesn't want to see me. I don't want to upset her more. She's a sweet girl and well suited with my brother. Edit. So this blew up way more than expected. By saying Eve is well suited to my brother, I just meant they balance each other very nicely. They're a lovely couple, and she has had such a positive influence on him. I have since spoken to my brother and Eve as he put the phone on speaker, and she was there. Turns out I didn't make her cry. Brother had told Mom I had upset her with my comments, but made no mention of Eve crying. Eve said that she didn't cry, she was just upset, but took nephew as she thought she would cry. She had been considering tinned potatoes and had mentioned them to me to see how they would go down with Mom and myself. Eve said she's going to make some roast potatoes and has asked if I would help her with the prep as brother is working during the day on Christmas Eve. I've told her that I will help her with the prep on Christmas Eve and that I would also take her and nephew out for lunch that day. I will also be buying another turkey crown that I will cook, so that Eve has leftovers to make Christmas dinner pies, which had been her initial plan with the turkey before they offered to cook for the 4 of us. I apologized to her, which she accepted. I'm going to cook next year. You're the jerk. You're doing nothing to contribute, so you have no say in how they cook what is essentially a free meal for you. Get over yourself. You're the jerk. Do you know how much these meals cost? I just spent nearly $200 for my family of 4. If you want a fresh turkey, go buy it. Holy cow. Someone is cooking and preparing this meal for you, and this is how you act? Oh, and apparently this poor woman who is paying for your dinner that she is cooking is also preparing another meal for her parents, just had a baby, and is also taking care of her special needs nephew? You know, instead of complaining, maybe you could act like a grown man and help her out. Everyone sucks here. I can't imagine feeding people 1-month-old frozen food for Christmas. Not the jerk. Cooking for holidays is a huge to-do, and if you aren't properly prepared for it, it's not worth it. Frozen turkey isn't a big deal, neither is pre-made gravy, but canned and row-made potatoes is a bit much. Pitch in an additional $200 to $300 so things can be done right. Not the jerk. But honestly, I just have food aversions and old food disgusts me. This meal sounds vile. I can see I'm in the minority here. Look, I wouldn't eat food that was a month old, but I wouldn't have been so rude to Eve. I would have talked to my brother and said, "Hey, I'm concerned that the meal won't be edible for mom and may be unsafe." Then you should have offered to make dinner yourself and shoulder the cost. If you aren't prepared to do that, then you're the jerk. Sell me your house. A couple of years ago, my husband and I bought a house from the city council. We had seen it and we loved everything about it and the neighborhood. Inspection showed that apart from the central heating boiler, everything was in good order. We still needed to replace the central heater boiler. We also renovated the bathroom and upstairs, and we placed a new kitchen. Between then and now, we have invested money in our home. Amongst other things, we placed solar panels, renovated the front and back garden, and renovated our downstairs toilet. For reference, we have lived here for around 6 years now, and we have no intention on moving. Apart from the fact that we pumped a lot of money in the house, we love the neighborhood, our neighbors, and the fact that we are close to family and friends. The way the council sold houses went as follows. The house was up for sale for 6 weeks. If you were interested, you could schedule a visit with a real estate agent, place a bid if you wanted, and then after the 6 weeks, the city council would look at all the bids and see who offered the most. 2 weeks ago, I was home when a lady rang the doorbell. She introduced herself and told me that when the house came up for sale all those years ago, she and her husband were interested. They could see the potential, but their bid was rejected. She was enthused about how it looked now, from what she could see, and how beautiful the garden was, how wonderful the solar panels were and such. So I thanked her for her compliments and waited for the reason why she rang the doorbell. She told me that since they had more money saved now, she and her husband wanted to know if we were interested in selling them the house. I told her that we were not interested. She started whining and gave an offer, and I told her the same, not interested at all. More whining ensued, and she made a new offer. I kindly drew the line and said that she can offer all she wants. We love living here, and we want to enjoy our home with the family we've built in it. Then I told her that I had things to do, wished her a good day, and closed the door. I had barely turned around when she started ringing the doorbell continuously, so I opened the door and asked her what she needed to say. She told me this, almost verbatim. "You need to sell us this house. You have lived here for some years now. My husband and kids deserve a nice house like this. I gave you 2 offers that are very reasonable. It's our turn now, so sell us the house. We want to live here." I told this woman that her offers were laughable. She gave 2 offers, while we knew that we could ask for double the price and get that still. She lowballed. I reiterated that we were not interested and would not sell the house. I asked her to leave and close the door again. Then she started ringing the doorbell like a madwoman. After trying to ignore it, I ripped open the front door and shouted in her face for her to get lost. We are not interested. Even if we were, I would not sell my house to her since she's acting like a spoiled brat. I wouldn't want my neighbors to deal with her spoiled attitude. I told her that she doesn't need to think about trying to bully us into moving and to get away, or I would call the police. This time I slammed the door to get the message across. She stayed, screaming at the door that we have to sell the house to her, and walked around a bit before leaving. I did send a message in our Streets group app about her. People have said to keep an eye out for her. My husband was stunned when I told him this, as this is not a normal thing in our country to do. She has been seen once or twice, but has not caused any more problems for us or anyone else. Karen took my credit card while I was asleep. I, 27, male, have been with my girlfriend, 24, female, for 7 months. We don't live together, and she has sleepovers at my place regularly. 2 days ago, she spent the night at my place, and in the morning, while I was sleeping in, she got up, got dressed, took my credit card, and went grocery shopping with it. I woke up to a massive breakfast made by her as a surprise, and when I asked her how she got the money and time to prepare all that, she told me she took my credit card while I was asleep and headed to the supermarket to get the stuff she needed to make me a surprise breakfast. I was stunned. I asked why she didn't ask before taking my credit card, and she said I was sleeping and she didn't want to bother me. Besides that, she wanted this to be a surprise. I just stared and said, I don't know. You do realize you technically stole from me when you took my credit card and went shopping with it without my consent, right? She looked at me in complete shock and confusion and said that she was just trying to do something nice for me, and I just implied that she was a thief. I just shrugged and said it was technically true. She was so upset, she got up and stormed out of the kitchen crying. She collected her stuff and left after she said she spent time and effort to prepare me breakfast, and I was out of line to say she stole from me just because she forgot her wallet at home. She kept hanging up when I tried calling her and later sent me money for the stuff she bought, although she didn't take anything with her. My sister came over, and when I told her, she called me an ungrateful jerk with no manners to react this way after this display of affection by my girlfriend. She suggested I get over myself and apologize as soon as possible, but I decided to take my time. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. I would give anything to have a girlfriend who would do something like that for me. Not only did she sleep over, but the next day she gets up early and goes to buy groceries to make you breakfast. I will never understand why girls choose jerks like you instead of the nice guys like me. Oh yeah, it's because I'm not 6'4" and don't have a six-pack. I also don't have tattoos, and I treat them with respect. In return, I am despised by them. It honestly serves her right to be with an ungrateful jerk like you. r/nice guys for the win. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.